Last week, the most powerful AI model in the US got switched off, not by hackers, but by the US government. Anthropic had just released Fable 5, its newest frontier model. Days later, the Commerce Department handed it an export control order. No foreign national anywhere on Earth is allowed to touch it. Not customers abroad, not even Anthropic's own non-citizen employees sitting in San Francisco. So Anthropic did the only thing it could. It pulled the plug on Fable and its sibling Mythos for everyone. And that single decision tells you exactly why China and a growing chunk of the world is making a very different bet on open source. So, what actually happened? The government's stated reason was national security. Officials said they'd learned of a way to jailbreak Fable 5, a trick that could unlock the heavy-duty cybersecurity capabilities of Mythos, finding software vulnerabilities that the US itself uses it to harden its own systems. The fear that power in the wrong hands becomes a cyber weapon. Here's the catch. The directive didn't just block foreign countries, it blocked foreign people, including immigrants working inside the United States. And because Anthropic couldn't surgically wall those users off, it had to disable the model for its entire customer base. And rivals noticed. OpenAI's executives reportedly told staff that building AI requires the best talent from around the world, because a huge share of America's top AI researchers are foreign-born. And if you tell those immigrants that they can't even use the models they helped build, you don't protect the lead, you hand other countries a recruiting pitch. That's the new risk in AI, not just the technology, but the unpredictable policy sitting on top of it. To understand why this matters so much, you have to understand what a frontier model actually is now. It's not a chatbot, it's infrastructure. The best models write production code, run multi-hour engineering tasks, discover security flaws, and increasingly do real research. The country that controls the most capable models controls a layer underneath its entire economy and military. Those are the stakes. When AI starts touching defense and critical systems, who can access this model stops becoming a product question and becomes a geopolitics question. So every serious country now faces the same problem. How do we guarantee we'll always have access to a state-of-the-art model, one nobody can switch off on us? The American answer has been keep the best models closed, controlled, and increasingly locked behind the government's gate. China's answer is the opposite. Make them open. Look at DeepSeek. This week, it closed its first ever funding round, over 50 billion yuan, about $7.4 billion, valuing the lab north of 50 billion, a record for a Chinese AI startup. But the structure of the deal is the interesting part. Investors didn't get to buy into DeepSeek directly. Instead, they had to put their money into a limited partnership controlled by founder Liang Wenfeng, a vehicle engineered so that Liang keeps absolute control of the company. On top of that, there's a 5-year lockup. Investors can't sell their stakes for half a decade. And look at who's writing the checks. Liang himself puts in the biggest 20 billion yuan, Tencent 10 billion, and a roster of other big Chinese companies piled into the round too. However, there's one investor exempt from that 5-year lockup, the one that gets direct equity and voting rights. It is China's National AI Industry Investment Fund. So China's most famous open source lab is now part funded and part steered by the Chinese state, while keeping its models free for the world to download. That's not a contradiction, that is a strategy. Because here's the thing China can't escape. Trust. If you're a company in Europe, India, or the US, where your private data physically lives and which government rule it falls under is a real consideration. For a lot of buyers, routing sensitive data through servers in another country raises questions they'd rather not deal with. And that cuts in every direction. Plenty of users outside the US feel the exact same way about American-hosted models. Open source is the way around that. When DeepSeek or Z.ai release the actual model weights under a permissive license, you don't have to use their servers at all. A provider in the US, Germany, or wherever you trust can host the exact same model. Your data never leaves a jurisdiction you're not comfortable with. So, open sourcing isn't charity, it's a distribution strategy. The model spreads everywhere, builds a developer base everywhere, and the question of trust quietly evaporates. But trust is only half of it. There's a second reason, and it's the one that ties straight back to where we started. Remember what just happened to Fable? One government decision and the best model in the world went dark for everyone outside the US overnight. That's the lesson every country and company just absorbed. If you depend on a model someone else controls, it can be switched off, denied, or used as leverage the moment politics shift. Now, you might think the obvious fix is just for China to build its own closed models, and it does, but that only protects China itself. Open source does something bigger. It kills the choke point as a category. Once the weights are downloaded and public, no one can ever claw them back. Not a regulator, not a rival, not a foreign government. The leverage the US just flexed only works on scarce, controlled models. Open weights make that kind of leverage impossible for anyone. By being the one that hands the world an unrevocable frontier-grade alternative, China flips America's choke point move into a liability. Every government and company that watched Fable go dark now has somewhere to go. And that somewhere is Chinese. It's not just insurance for China, it's China selling insurance to everyone else. And there's a side effect worth flagging. When a model this capable is free to download and a fraction of the price to run, it puts a ceiling on what anyone can charge the broad middle of the market. It sets a number that every buyer can now point to. That doesn't kill the closed labs enterprise business, but it does anchor the whole market's pricing, which brings us to the model that just made that ceiling impossible to ignore. And that model is GLM 5.2 from Chinese lab Z.ai, also known as Zifu. It dropped this week with a genuine 1 million token context window and a focus on long, multi-hour coding tasks. And the numbers are wild. On Terminal Bench, it scores 81 versus Cloud Opus 4.8 at 85. On a long horizon engineering benchmark called Frontier SWE, it trails Opus 4.8 by 1%, while beating GPT 5.5. It's the strongest open source model across the board, and it ships under an MIT license, no regional limits. Anyone, anywhere can download it and run it. Now, here's the part that should make every AI lab nervous. The cost. Opus 4.8 runs $5 per million input tokens, $25 per million output. GLM 5.2, $1.40 in, $4.40 out. That's roughly a sixth of the price on output for performance within a few points of the best closed model on the planet. So step back and look at the two roads. One country is walling its best models off so tightly that its own government just switched the top one off overnight, even for the people who built it. The other is giving its best models away, funded by the state, hosted by anyone, impossible to revoke. And in doing that, it's handing every government and company spooked by that shutdown a place to land. That's the real move. Closed models make you a choke point. Open models make you the safe harbor. We don't know which road wins. But after this week, the question isn't whether the world is betting on open source. It's how much it's already wagered and whether closed AI can hold its lead when the alternative can't be switched off and costs a fraction of the price. If you enjoyed watching this video, hit like and subscribe. I'll see you in the next one.